State's next witness.
The state will call Jennifer Schriever. This witness will be a little more soft-spoken.
Just telling Mark, I set it on auto, so I'm not responsible when it turns on. Or when it turns off. Stay standing, face me. Your promise testimony about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth. If so, say I do.
I do.
Please see them.
Should I try it?
Sure. Just gotta push the button. Green button on the left side.
Ma'am, if you could please adjust that microphone so you can speak so we can hear you, okay?
Okay.
Can you please state your name for the record, your first and last name, and please spell them both for the record?
Jennifer Schriever, Jenniffer, Schriever.
And ma'am, you're going to have to speak up so we can all hear you, okay?
Okay.
I'm sorry, the air conditioner is running.
Okay.
Not anymore. There we go.
Thank you. Ma'am, how far to school did you go?
I have a high school diploma.
And ma'am, back on August the 30th of 2017, where did you live?
I lived at 107 South Hilltop, apartment number 11 in Alta Vista.
And we've heard in this case that the apartment complex at that address in Alta Vista, there was 3 different buildings. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did you live in the same building as Mr. Koehn or a different building?
I lived in a different building.
And who did you live with?
I lived with my son.
Anybody else?
No.
Prior to August 30th, 2017, had you met Cheyenne Harris?
Prior to what date, I'm sorry?
August 30th, when the police came, 2017.
Yes, I had met her.
How was it that you first met Cheyenne Harris?
I was working at the local gas station convenience store downtown. I had seen her walking on the sidewalk outside the apartment. She came into the store one day and I introduced myself, welcomed her to the town, to Alta Vista.
So did you work at the convenience store?
Yes, sir.
And what was the name of the convenience store?
AB Express.
And we heard testimony here a few moments ago that Express convenience store, AB Express, was located at a block or 2 blocks from the apartment complex. Is that correct?
Yeah, about 3 blocks, yeah.
Easy walking distance?
Yes.
When you worked at the AB Express gas station, did you notice whether or not they sold diapers there?
I believe they did, but it wasn't stocked very well all the time.
They sell food?
Some food.
And again, this was in walking distance from the apartment complex, correct?
Yes.
Now, when you said that you introduced yourself to Cheyenne Harris, when would that have occurred?
Like the date?
Give us a time range in relation to August 30th.
I think it was around June, middle of June-ish. Somewhere in there.
Of 2017?
Yes, sir.
Was Cheyenne alone?
I think the first time she was, yeah, when I introduced myself.
Now, you said that you had seen Ms. Harris around the apartment complex, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you believe her to be a resident of the complex?
Yes.
When did you first meet Mr. Koehn, Mr. Koehn?
I'm not exactly sure on the date, but it was one day he was outside with my boyfriend at the time listening to music in his van, in my boyfriend's van.
Would that have been before or after you met Ms. Harris at the convenience store?
It was after I met Miss Harris.
So it would have been sometime after June of 2017?
Yes.
Can you give us a sense of how long you think it would have been after the time you met Ms. Harris?
Approximately maybe a week. It wasn't very long.
And you said you were outside the apartment complex?
Yes.
And where did you encounter Mr. Koehn?
He was in my boyfriend's van.
And did you have a conversation with Mr. Koehn?
I did. I introduced myself and told him he had a cute daughter, and that she looked just like him, and told him I'd be glad to babysit sometime.
Now, had you seen the daughter someplace before, or was the daughter with Mr. Koehn?
No, I'd seen the daughter outside with Cheyenne.
When you saw Mr. Koehn that day, a week after you met Cheyenne at the convenience store, did you know that he lived in that apartment?
Yeah, I had been told by hearsay, yeah.
So you knew that he lived in that apartment complex up there?
Yes.
So you met him, you told him he had a cute daughter, and he looked just like Mr. Koehn, the daughter, and you offered to watch the daughter? Is that correct?
Yes.
And what happened next?
I believe that was the same day they had asked me to babysit.
Now, had you met, or did you know that they had a baby as well?
No, there was a storm prior to me meeting him, and I had never seen the baby before the storm, and that's when I found out that they had a baby. Or it was
So
after.
let me stop there, ma'am, excuse me. But when you met Mr. Koehn, at that point, did you know if they had a baby or not?
I don't believe so, no.
So you told Mr. Koehn that you'd be happy to watch the child?
Yeah.
Were you talking about Nala?
Yes.
And what happened next?
I want to say that's when they came over that same day and asked me to babysit, or he was going to talk to Cheyenne and see if I could babysit.
And did you in fact babysit the children?
Yes.
Where did you babysit them at?
My house, my apartment.
And how many children did you babysit?
2.
And what were their names?
Sterling and Noah,
And who were the parents?
Cheyenne and Zach.
And to be clear, when you babysat the parents, was it the same day you met Mr. Koehn?
I believe so.
How long did you babysit the children?
I had a good 16, 17 hours the first time I babysat.
I want to ask about your observations of Sterling, okay?
Okay.
And do I understand this would have been in June of 2017?
Well, the end of June, I'm going to say yeah.
The end of June? What was your observations of Sterling? Was he a happy baby?
He was very happy.
How would you describe him?
When Cheyenne handed him to me, he didn't cry or whimper. I just noticed he was rather tiny. He was clean, seemed well taken care of, just seemed on the small side.
I want to ask you a little bit about your experience taking care of infants and children in general, okay? Do you have children? You mentioned the son earlier.
Yes, and I have a daughter also.
So how many children have you raised?
2.
Have you cared for other children throughout the course of your life?
Yes, I have nieces and nephews and plenty of other young children I have watched.
So this isn't the first baby you have?
No.
You said that the baby appeared to be tiny. What did you mean by that?
He just seemed really lightweight. When she handed him to me, I kind of gestured as like this, testing the weight of the baby in my arms. And that's when she went into telling me that they were having issues.
I'm not going to have you say anything that she told you, okay? I want your observations, please.
Okay.
So the baby was light.
Yeah, he seemed really, really light.
Did you know how old the baby was?
I was guessing about 2 months, but I had asked Cheyenne, and she couldn't even tell me how old her baby was.
Now, ma'am, I want to ask a little bit more about your interactions with the child, Sterling, okay? During the 16 or 17 hours that you watched Sterling, did you have to change his diaper?
Yes, sir.
And how would you know that he needed a diaper change?
You could tell, or I would just automatically check, to make sure he wasn't wet or dirty.
Would Sterling let you know by crying or doing something to let you know he had a wet or dirty diaper?
Yeah, he would cry. Mhm.
And did you change his diaper?
Yes, sir.
Did you make any observations about his bottom when you changed his diaper?
Yes, he had a very raw diaper rash.
What do you mean?
It was to the point of the skin becoming chapped and almost to the point of cracking.
And did you do anything to treat the diaper rash?
Yes, I had A&D ointment that Mom and Dad had left for me to treat the diaper rash.
And in that 16 or 17 hours, do you have a sense of how many diapers you changed?
Nah. 16, 17 hours, I'm going to say 5 or 6 diapers, possibly maybe more.
And did you use the ointment each time?
I did.
Did you notice any change in the diaper rash?
It seemed to get a little less red and it looked a little less chapped. It had gotten better over the few hours.
And did you feed the baby during the time the baby was in your care?
Yes, sir.
And we're talking about Sterling, right?
Yes.
What was your impressions of how he took a bottle?
He took a bottle very well, ate very well, 6 to 8 ounces, sometimes more.
What type of formula would you feed Sterling?
It was a Similac, I believe, that she had brought.
And would you mix up the bottles?
Yes.
And when you gave him a bottle, you said he took 6 to 8 ounces.
Mm-hmm.
Did he have any trouble latching onto the bottle and getting the formula out of the bottle?
Not at all.
Was there another time that you watched Sterling?
Yes.
How long after the first time that you watched Sterling did you watch him the second time?
I would say this was getting into the middle of July. Middle to end of July.
And were you asked to watch Sterling?
Yes.
Did you still live in the apartment complex in the middle of July when you watched Sterling the second time?
Yes.
And where did you watch Sterling the second time?
At my apartment.
Did you watch Nala as well?
Yes, sir.
When you watched Sterling the first time, did you have Nala with you as well?
Yes.
Was she properly clothed when she arrived at your residence?
Yes.
Was she appeared properly nourished?
Yes, she was very, very thick young lady. Yeah.
What do you mean?
She was heavy. She was chunky, a chubby little 2-year-old.
And the second time when you watched Nala and Sterling in the middle of July, did you notice any change in Nala's appearance?
No, they were both still clean, well maintained.
Was Nala still thick and chunky?
Yes.
How about Sterling? What was he like when you saw him in the middle of July?
He seemed like he had gained a little bit of weight, gotten a little bit bigger, but still pretty small.
Had you seen him or cared for him between the middle of June and the middle of July when you saw him the second time?
I don't recall seeing Sterling. However, I had seen Nala outside with Miss Harris a couple different times.
How long did you care for Sterling and Nala the second time?
It was still about 16 hours. It was quite a while.
And was it again at your residence?
Yes.
During that time, did you give Sterling a bottle?
Yes.
How was Sterling the second time? Was he still a happy baby?
He was still a happy baby, still eating well, still going to the bathroom on a regular, crying to let me know when he needed anything.
Where did he sleep at your place?
They both slept with me in my bed because I didn't have any type of pack and play or a crib or anything like that. So I snuggled him up with me.
Did you sleep overnight both times with the children?
Yes.
During the night, did Sterling alert you that he needed either to be fed or changed?
He slept through the night.
Both times?
Both times.
Now, the second time you said he was eating well. What do you mean by that?
He was still taking bottles well, eating well, regularly, like a 2.5, 3-month-old would.
Well, would he still eat 6 or 8 ounces of formula, or would he eat more or less?
Sometimes more. He was a little bit more. He seemed a little bit more hungry. Yeah.
And over the 16 and 17 hour period on both times, approximately how many bottles did you give to Sterling?
Oh goodness, he was eating every 2.5 to 3 hours. So he had quite a few bottles.
And you'd make him up with the formula each time and give them to Sterling?
Yep.
Now you said the first time you walked Sterling, he had no trouble latching onto the nipple and getting the liquid out of the bottle. Was there any trouble the second time?
No.
Did you also have occasion to change his diaper the second time in mid-July when Sterling stayed in your care?
Yes.
Do you have a sense of how many diapers you changed the second time in that 16 and 17 hour period?
I'm guessing about the same amount.
What was
6.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
5 or 6, maybe more.
What were your observations of his bottom when you changed his diaper that second time you walked Sterling in the middle of July?
He had a small diaper rash, but nothing like the first time. He was okay. It was just a minor rash.
And what did you do to treat the rash?
Same thing, using Andy ointment, excuse me.
Did it respond to the treatment?
Yeah.
How so?
It lessened up in redness. It was just red, so it started lightening up in redness.
Are those the 2 occasions that you cared for Sterling?
The only 2, yes.
And the second time you said would have been mid-July 2017, correct?
Yep.
And as you sit here now, can you put a specific date on it?
I cannot.
Was that the last time you saw Sterling?
That was the last time I saw Sterling.
Had you developed a relationship with the defendant, Mr. Koehn, excuse me, and his children, and Cheyenne Harris?
More so with his children, I would say, than either of them.
If Mr. Koehn had come to you for assistance, would you have given it to him?
Absolutely.
If he asked you to care for the children, would you have done so?
Yes, I would have.
If he asked for spare diapers or wipes or formula or food for him or his family, would you have given it to him?
Yes, I would have. If I couldn't do it, I would make sure I would have found some place to go so he could get it.
Now I want to turn your attention to August 30th, 2017.
Okay.
How did you learn that Sterling had died?
Through Mr. Koehn outside. I went outside for a cigarette, and he came out shortly from his apartment building, and I had said hello, and he was pacing back and forth on the sidewalk, and he didn't respond, so I walked over to him, and I said, "What's going on?" I asked him what was wrong, and he said, "He's gone. He's just gone." I'm like, "Who's gone?" He's like, "My baby boy is gone. He's just gone." And he's smoking a cigarette outside, and I'm like, "Well, is anybody coming? Did you call 911? And he's like, "We don't know what to do at this point." I was like, "Well, don't you think you should get on the phone and call 911 and put that cigarette out?" kind of thing. And he then, put a cigarette out and went in and called 911. I'm assuming.
How long was it till the first responders arrived?
It seemed like 20 minutes, half hour. It seemed like a while.
Did you offer to take Nala?
I didn't offer to take Nala at that point, no.
When you saw Mr. Koehn outside the building, was he crying?
No. He was pale, like he was confused and lost.
Did you call 911?
I did not.
Why not?
Because I didn't have my phone with me. Honestly, I didn't think of it. He was closer.
Prior to the first responders coming to the apartment, did Mr. Koehn come back to your apartment?
He didn't come back to my apartment.
Did they have a pet?
Yes. Yes, he did ask me outside, when I was still outside, if I would take Leo, his dog.
Who asked you that?
Mr. Koehn.
When did he ask you if you'd take his dog?
Right before he went into the apartment, right before he went into the apartment.
Was this after you told him that he needed to be calling 911 instead of smoking a cigarette?
Yes.
So he asked you to take his dog?
Yeah.
Did you take his dog?
I did take his dog.
Did you take his dog before or after the police arrived?
It was before.
And to be clear, he asked you to take the dog?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all the questions I have.
Cross?
Ms. Schriever, I'd like to talk about some more details when you babysat Nala and Sterling. When Ms. Harris and Mr. Koehn came over to your apartment for you to watch the children, they brought a notebook with them, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
And that notebook listed health concerns for both children.
Right.
For example, Tylenol for Nala because she was teething or getting sick or something, right?
Yes.
And they also informed you that Sterling did have a diaper rash, right?
I don't recall that.
Excuse me,
I don't-
Your Honor. Excuse me, ma'am. Your Honor, I'm going to object to any statements made by Ms. Harris. If you're saying.
In response?
Well, let me ask.
You said they. Why don't we keep it focused on your client?
All right. They, both of the parents provided you, I don't want to ask about what they said at this point, provided you with some ointment, correct?
Yes.
And were you provided with different diapers for each child?
Yeah. Each had different size diapers.
And you were provided with blankets for the children, correct? And also provided with clean clothes for the children?
Yes.
Did you have a phone number at which to reach either Mr. Harris, either Ms. Harris or Mr. Koehn?
Yes, I did.
Throughout the time that Mr. Koehn lived in the apartment building near you, did you have more contact with Cheyenne or with Zach?
I believe more was Cheyenne because I would, see her in passing outside more than I'd see Zach. He was gone working an awful lot, so I didn't see much of Zach.
So you say he was gone working an awful lot?
Yeah.
And you were able to observe when the family's car was gone, correct?
Yeah, my window was right there, and I could hear them pulling in and out. They didn't have the quietest vehicle.
So you knew literally when they were coming and going where Mr. Koehn was coming and going, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, I want to focus on your contact with Ms. Harris at this time. I believe you told us that she came into the store where you work, is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm a little bit confused. Did she have knowledge with her when she first came into the store where you work?
I know a couple times when she came in and I didn't introduce myself, she had Nala, but when I introduced myself, I don't recall if Nala was with her or not.
And she did not have Sterling with her when she came into the community, correct?
No, sir.
You also saw her walking around the sidewalks outside the apartment complex?
Yes.
And you observed Nala with her at that time?
Yes.
And you did not observe Sterling to be with her?
I never seen her outside with Sterling once.
Now, there was a storm that you mentioned in your direct examination at the apartment building, right?
Right.
And I believe that that storm knocked a tree down onto, strike that, let me ask this. You live in the same complex in a different building.
Correct.
And did the storm knock a tree down onto the building where Mr. Koehn and Ms. Harris lived?
Yes.
Did you go outside and see the damage the day after the storm?
We were outside right after the storm.
Did you observe Ms. Harris out there as well?
Yes, I did.
Nala was with her at that time?
Nala was with her.
But Sterling was not with her? at that
Sterling
time?
was not with her.
And Mr. Koehn at that time, to your knowledge, was at work, correct?
Yes.
And the length of time that you saw Ms. Harris and Nala outside of the apartment was about 20 minutes to a half hour, right?
Yes.
And your boyfriend even gave Nala a popsicle?
Yep. Yes.
At any point, did Ms. Harris take Nala back inside the apartment?
It wasn't until after that 20 minutes or a half hour, and we were on the opposite side of our apartment building from theirs. and Sterling was still in their apartment.
And this was in June or July of 2017, correct?
Yes, sir.
To follow up on some of your physical observations of Ms. Harris, she seemed you'd always be depressed, didn't she?
She seemed depressed, yeah. She hardly smiled. She just didn't seem all there.
And at some point after August 30th of 2017, the police came and talked with you about Ms. Harris and Mr. Koehn, right?
Say the dates again, I'm sorry.
After August 30th of 2017, you talked with the police about Mr. Koehn and Ms. Harris, right?
Yes, sir.
And you described Ms. Harris as disconnected.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
She never seemed excited like you've seen other new mothers be.
Right.
Did you ever ask her how old her son was?
I did, and she...
Excuse me, Your Honor, interjected an objection to any statement made by Ms. Harris.
Rephrase the question.
My question was just if she had asked, if this was asked. I think she answered that.
Okay. I would agree, I think it was a yes, no.
Ms. Schriever, I'm getting just about done, but I want to ask you about something, an interaction that you had with Ms. Harris and Mr. Koehn after Sterling's death.
Okay.
My understanding is that you were taking care of their dog, right?
Yes.
And you encountered them at the park.
Yes.
Without going into what was said, I'm simply asking, did Ms. Harris make a statement that you thought was odd?
Yes.
And it was a statement that you felt was important to share with the police, correct?
Yes.
What did Ms. Harris say?
Your Honor, excuse me, I would object that here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to just take a brief recess and listen to this outside of your presence. And then we'll bring it back in after we're done. It should be very brief. Continue to heed the admonition. Obviously, I don't know what the statement is, so I want to... We're off the record, so... Oh, were you on?
Yes.
Okay. You were looking at me like you were off the record. So
We're on.
the statement is, are you offering to prove that she simply felt she needed to tell the police something for that purpose?
No.
Offering to prove the matter asserted.
I believe that this is an admission, an admission against interest by Ms. Harris, so it is all under exception to hearsay. So at this point, I would like to make an offer of proof since we're outside the presence of the jury.
Okay, that's what I want to do. I want to find out what the statement's going to be. I don't need an offer of proof yet because I haven't overruled it.
I was just going to say, the court hasn't ruled one way or another, so I don't want to make an offer of proof yet. Ms. Schriever, I know you've gone through a lot. Do you remember my question?
I don't.
Okay.
Sorry.
Excuse me, Your Honor, this is for an offer of proof.
This is so I know what the statement's going to be.
Okay.
Before I sustain or overrule this objection, I need to know what she's going to say.
I understand. Then I will withhold my objection to the end, correct, Your Honor?
We will redo it before the jury,
Yes.
and we ask the question, and I will rule on the objection at that time. But before I sustain or overrule this objection, I want to know what the answer is going to be so that I can understand whether there is an exception to the hearsay rule. Because obviously it's pure hearsay. Whether there's an exception or whether it's not being offered for the matter asserted, and therefore it is removed from the hearsay rule is what I need to know. Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Schriever, I had asked about a statement. I'm only asking at this time. There was a statement that you heard Ms. Harris make after Sterling passed away, and you heard that statement at the park, right?
Yes.
And then you felt the need to share that statement with law enforcement, correct?
Yes, sir.
What is it that you heard Ms. Harris say?
Ms. Harris tapped Zach on the arm, backhanded, like on the arm, and had stated, "I told you we should have taken Nala and Leo and ran."
Prior to that, did she make any statements about feeling like the police were out to get her?
Yes.
That is a statement, Your Honor.
Okay. And what exception?
This is an exception against, or excuse me, this is a statement against penal interest, Your Honor. At this time,
Mr. Callister?
Thank you, Your Honor. If you give me just a moment to pull up the rule. Your Honor, it is Rule 5.804, subparagraph B3, and it encompasses A and B. And Your Honor, simply put, it's the same position that, number one, this does not meet the definition of being against the declarant's interest in the sense that that is defined under a statement against interest. It's also not trustworthy, Your Honor, and that is the most important part of this case. This is a statement made by somebody who has been charged with the crime of murder in the first degree. This is a co-defendant. It is not one that exposes her directly to criminal liability. There's nothing in the statement that says that I did this, or I'm guilty, or I'm responsible, which would be the typical places where you would see a statement against interest. So I don't think that, Your Honor, it meets the definition of statement against interest. I don't believe it falls within the exception to the hearsay rule. I would also say, Your Honor, that the defendant is not unavailable in the sense that Rule 5.804 requires. She has invoked her right against self-incrimination, but that is not meet the definition the state would contend for purposes of unavailability under Rule 5.804.
5.804 deals with hearsay statements made by declarants who are unavailable to testify. 5.804A1 applies to witnesses who are exempted from testifying about the subject matter because the court rules that a privilege applies. This court has previously ruled that the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination privilege applies, and therefore she is an unavailable declarant. The court further finds that pursuant to 5.804 sub B sub 3 sub A, statement against interest, which provides a statement made by a reasonable person in the declarant's position, in this case Cheyenne Harris, would have only been made if the person believed it to be true, and because when made it was so contrary to the declarant's proprietary or pecuniary interest, or had so great a tendency to invalidate the declarant's claim against someone else, to expose the declarant to civil or criminal liability, and is supported by corroborating evidence. The court finds that it is supported by corroborating evidence and that her statement was made in such a fashion that it would not have been made if it were not true and was contrary to her proprietary interest. And therefore, I do find that that section is an exception to the hearsay rule and will admit the statement, also recognizing that it could have a negative effect on the defendant as well. And whether that opens up other issues is something else that needs to be sorted out between counsel.
Your Honor, there's one other issue I think which is related, I think we should handle now outside the presence of the jury.
Is this further evidence that I don't know about?
This, I think, and if I'm wrong, the defense can correct me. I believe that they'll also try to introduce the statement made by Mr. Koehn in response to that statement made by Ms. Harris. Is that the case?
Yes.
And what is that statement?
The statement is, what I plan to ask this witness is whether Mr. Koehn agreed or disagreed with that statement.
And then what will her answer be?
I expect that this witness would testify that Mr. Koehn disagreed with that statement and said that would be bad.
Okay.
And Your Honor, our position would be that this would be a statement offered by the defendant. It's clearly hearsay. It falls under no exception. It should not be admissible. And therefore, when we talked about in the motion in limine, it should not come in. This is not a statement that we've offered a part of so they can offer the remaining balance of the statement. We did not talk about this interaction at all during our direct examination. And the state's contention is if the court finds that Cheyenne Harris' statement comes in, there's nothing to allow Mr. Koehn's statement to come in.
Mr. Grossman?
I actually don't have a response to that, Your Honor. I agree with the state's assessment of Mr. Koehn's statement. So I will stop my inquiry at Ms. Harris' statement.
Okay. But I am going to allow Ms. Harris' statement.
And to be clear, just so I understand, Your Honor, you'll allow this witness to say that Ms. Harris said, I told you we should have taken Nala and ran.
Nala and Leo and ran.
Just Nala. I believe is what she said.
She said no.
She said, oh, I'm sorry.
She said Nala and Leo.
Thank you, sir. I understand the court's ruling. Thank you.
All right.
And just before we bring the jury back in, I just want to make sure Ms. Schriever is clear so that we don't end up, I think she's intelligent enough to understand it. I want to make it clear to Ms. Schriever that we understand there was a statement that was made by Mr. Koehn afterwards. I'm not going to ask you about that, and the court has ruled that cannot come in.
Okay.
So I'm just going to ask, when you answer my question, just limit it just to what Ms. Harris said.
Okay.
Basically testify to exactly what you just said
Okay.
already here, okay?
Yep.
All right. Bring the jury back, please. And before they come in, just for the record, Mark, real quick, this court was unaware of what this statement was prior to this. There had been no motion to limit on the specific statement. That's why we needed to make this record outside the scope of it. All right. Sorry about that. Be seated. Mr. Drowser, do you remember the last question?
I do not recall, well, I recall the question, I don't recall the exact words.
Do you understand? I heard the exact same question. So, Mark, would you read the question back? The one that was asked in the off-the-record conversation. Off the record. I mean, the record outside the scope of the jury. Are you comfortable just re-asking it?
I am.
Okay, let's just do it that way, Mark.
I will back up for this one a little bit, just because we had an interruption there. Before we asked the jury to step out for a few minutes, I asked you if you remembered an incident after Sterling's death at the park. Do you recall that incident?
Yes.
And I asked you if there was a statement that Ms. Harris made that you found to be odd,
Yes.
and if you felt you needed to report that to law enforcement.
Yes.
What did Ms. Harris say?
She had taken her hand and backhanded Zach's arm and said, "I told you we should have taken Noah, Leo, and Rand."
And did she make a statement about feeling like the police or law enforcement were out to get her in this incident?
Yes.
And no further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Who is Leo?
Leo's their dog.
And so you saw Leo, the dog, and the defendant and Miss Harris at a park, correct?
Correct.
How long after Sterling's death do you think that was?
This was about 2 days after the 30th, September 1st, 2nd, something like that.
How would you describe the defendant's mood?
They seemed to be pretty happy. They were planning the funeral, talking about who was going to be singing the songs that they were going to pick out, family, things like that.
Is it fair to say that they appeared to be a lot happier than when you saw them on August the 30th?
A little bit more upbeat, yes.
And what led you to think that they were pretty happy?
Just their demeanor. They were cracking jokes, giggling, laughing, having fun with the dog, letting him run around because he'd been locked up in an apartment. They seemed okay.
And again, how many days after Sterling's death was this?
2 days.
Nothing further.
No request, Your Honor.
Can this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor. In fact, can she be excused from the balance of this trial?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I think they're asking, Your Honor, because we had also issued it.
Oh, you would issue a subpoena to her as well?
We had as well by error, so we'll be releasing her from our subpoenas.
Okay. You are free to go.
Thank you.
Do you want to start with your next witness, or do you want to start with her in the morning?
We can get started and then just stop at 4:30.
Let's keep rolling.
The state calls Agent Jim Teal.
I do have a record we're going to need to make a motion, so after based on the prior 62210 motion, I want to make a record of that. Sir, raise your right hand. You promise the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Have a seat. Proceed.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Jim Teal. I'm a special agent with the Division of Criminal Investigation in Mason City.
What does that mean?
I work for the Department of Public Safety in the Division of Criminal Investigation, and I work in the Major Crime Unit, which is in our zone, which is 29 counties in north central and northeast Iowa. We assist county and local law enforcement agencies, typically with major cases, such as death investigations and abductions, child abuse cases, and that type of thing.
How long have you done that work?
I've been with the DCI since June of 2007.
What did you do prior to that?
Prior to that, I was with the State Fire Marshal's Office. I actually got hired by the state of Iowa in January of 1990 and was with the State Fire Marshal's Office through June of 2007. In the Fire Marshal's Office, I worked as an inspector and also worked as a special agent in the Bureau of Arson and Explosives.
What is your educational background?
I graduated from high school and then went to college for about a year down in Arizona. Ended up moving back to Iowa and got my EMT certification and worked on a paramedic service in Waterloo and Cedar Falls for about 2.5 years before getting hired by the state of Iowa in 1990.
After being hired by the state of Iowa, did you go through the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy?
I went to the DPS Academy, which the Department of Public Safety has their own academy for. That includes state troopers, DCI agents, our narcotics agents, and the fire marshal. So we have our own academy separate from the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy.
How long is that?
It was 16 weeks when I went in 1990.
Is that at Camp Dodge?
It was.
I assume with your work that you have to continue to get new educational requirements every year, is that right?
Yes, we have required training that we do every year. We also have additional training on investigation and crime scene, interview and interrogation, and other related facets of our job.
So how does the DCI get called into a case?
Again, we can be requested by both local police departments, county sheriff's offices, or even county attorneys to assist in cases that they have.
What kind of hours do you work?
For my contract, I'm supposed to work like 8 to 4:30 every day, but actually we quite often start earlier than that and may end or later than that. We are basically on call 24 hours a day unless we're out of town on vacation.
Tell us what just a typical day is for you.
A typical day in the DCI is, there is no such thing as a typical day, because as I tell people, I have a vehicle that has 4 tires and a gas cart, and that's actually my office because we cover such a large area, about a third of the state. And so I may be doing interviews on either a current case or one that we've had in the past several weeks. Just in the last 3 weeks, I assisted on a homicide investigation in Webster City, and then we had a double homicide in Fort Dodge. So I had not spent any time in my office at all in the last 3 weeks.
And there are those days where you will get to be in the office to work on your case reports and things like that, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, I'd like to talk to you about August 30th of 2017. Were you called out to assist with the death investigation of an infant?
Yes, I was.
Can you explain how that process worked?
Yes, actually we were in Cedar Falls doing some training.
You say we, who is that?
The agents in the major crime unit in Zone 3 were all together in Cedar Falls doing some training. And my supervisor, Special Agent Mike Craffle, contacted me or let me know that there was a death investigation that we needed to go assist Chickasaw County Sheriff's Office with in Alta Vista.
Do you know about what time that was?
I believe it was sometime after 1 o'clock that afternoon. I don't know exactly the exact time. Excuse me.
Okay, so where did you go?
I drove to the Chickasaw County Sheriff's Office and arrived there at approximately 2:43 in the afternoon, 2:43 p.m. on August 30th of 2017.
Who did you meet with at the sheriff's office?
Besides the DCI agents that were also assigned to the case, being Special Agent John Turbot and Special Agent Chris Calloway, I also met with now Chief Deputy Reed Palo from the Chickasaw County Sheriff's Office.
Did you have a certain assignment that you were given?
John Turbot was the case agent for this case, and so John had assigned me to put together a search warrant for the residents in Alta Vista that we were going to go to.
You said he was the case agent. What does that mean?
When DCI gets called in to assist in an investigation, we assign one of the agents as sort of the lead agent or investigator that is in charge of, most importantly, doing the report at the end of the day. We compile everything into one report, and he also is the one that makes assignments for people to go out and do interviews, do crime scene work, and do other follow-up investigation.
Is that always the same person, or does that rotate through the people in Zone 3, the people within your area?
That will rotate through our zone, as currently we have 7 agents and a supervisor in Zone 3, and they take turns basically of getting cases depending on what their workload is and what their trial schedules are. It varies from person to person. We try not to have the same person be the case agent, as you can imagine, on all of our cases.
Okay, so you were assigned to take care of a search warrant. What did you do?
I collected facts from the Chickasaw County Sheriff's Office in reference to the incident that had happened that day, such as the time they got called out, the location, some basic facts about the residents and where they were called to, put that information together and the basic factual information together to present to a judge to obtain a search warrant.
Did the judge sign the search warrant?
Yes, he did.
Once it was signed, what did you do?
After the search warrant was signed, I proceeded to go to Alta Vista to the residence where the young child had been found earlier in the day.
What time did you arrive at the residence?
I believe I arrived at the residence about 6:27 p.m. on August 30th.
What did you do when you got there?
I met with the sheriff and Deputy Russell that were at the scene from the Chickasaw County Sheriff's Office and spoke to them a little bit, and then before taking the overall photographs of the scene, I actually went over and spoke to Jennifer Schriever, because I was made aware that the 2-year-old girl from this residence was over at Jennifer's house, so I was going over to check on her well-being.
On Jennifer's well-being or the child?
I'm sorry, on the 2-year-old's well-being.
And why were you doing that?
Because as we're called into this case, I'm given facts by other people, and I need to make sure that the child doesn't need any medical attention. I presume that would have been taken care of, but it's always good for us to put eyes on the child, and I also, while I was there, was going to check and make sure that there wasn't an issue for Jennifer to take care of her for a little while until other arrangements were made.
And you learned through your investigation up to that point the child's name was Nala.
That's correct.
And did you see Nala?
I did.
Any obvious health concerns for you?
No obvious concern. She looked basically like a typical 2-year-old and was busy running around in Jennifer's apartment.
Right after talking to Jennifer, what did you do?
After talking to Jennifer, I then went back and took photographs of the scene, the exterior photographs, and then went into the apartment building and took photographs in the apartment.
Is it fair to say you were assigned to write the search warrant, but you were also assigned as the crime scene person, basically?
That's correct.
All right, so you're taking photographs of the outside of the apartment, the inside of the apartment. During this time, did you also end up speaking with the DHS worker?
I did. The on-call person for the Department of Human Services came out. Becky Halskoff was the person that was on call that night when she came to the scene.
Was there a decision made when she was there as to what to do with Nala?
Yes, there was.
And what happened with Nala?
Becky had told me that the Department of Human Services decided to put Nala into their temporary custody for the night at least.
Do you have experience in dealing with crime scenes?
I do.
What is that?
As I said, I started working for the State Fire Marshal's Office in January of 1990, and through my experience in the Fire Marshal's Office, I was an inspector and also did fire investigations. And I had averaged between 80 and 120 cases a year when I worked in the Fire Marshal's Office doing fire and explosive investigations. We processed all of our own crime scenes, or fire scenes. And then when I transferred to the DCI in 2007, I also was assisting in the major crime unit of processing crime scenes. And as I said, we currently have 7 agents plus a supervisor. We have some people that typically do a lot of our interviews, and we have people such as myself. I usually get picked to do the crime scenes. So besides assisting on the crime scenes for our zone, and when I was in the Fire Marshal's Office, besides taking care of my own crime scenes, I would also get a call to assist other agents in the Fire Marshal's Office with their crime scenes. So besides the 80 to 120 cases a year I did of my own, I would also help other agents with their crime scenes. And the same thing happens in DCI, is that besides having the scenes in our zone, and we're called to other zones to help them, I quite often go to do the crime scene work with those scenes.
Now, there are people at the DCI Criminalist Laboratory that do come out to crime scenes at times, correct?
That is correct.
Is there a reason that those people weren't called?
Over the years, based on our training and experience that we have in processing crime scenes, depending on the technical aspects of the crime scene, we quite often will process our own crime scenes if there's not something that we specifically need the DCI lab for.
Meaning if you walk into a house that has blood all over a wall, Is that something that you would normally process yourself?
Typically not. We would probably call the DCI crime scene team to come out and process that for us.
And they are more of the science people, correct?
That's correct.
So this particular scene, the determination was made that you could handle this on your own.
Yeah. Based on our first meeting, when we arrived a little before 3 o'clock in the afternoon and met with Reed Palo and other officers there, in talking about, they knew what the scene looked like and sort of explained it to us, so we thought that we could probably process this crime scene. The crime scene team, as I didn't mention before, is actually responsible for covering all 99 counties. That's why we sometimes do our own crime scenes, because sometimes they're busy with other scenes or may get called to another scene. So.
How long were you at the apartment that day?
I believe I arrived approximately 6:30 that night, and I believe I left approximately 11:13 p.m.
We're going to come back to some of the things you did, but just real quickly, the following day, in 2 days after that, did you conduct some interviews with Deputy Palo?
Yes, the initial time we were there was August 30th, and then we went back to Alta Vista on September 1st, 2 days later, and conducted a neighborhood canvass.
Following those interviews, did you have any further involvement in the case?
My only other further involvement in the case was returning the search warrants after they were all completed to the Chickasaw County Clerk of Court's office.
I think this is a good place to break, and we can go through your crime scene photographs tomorrow.
Sounds good. All right. That clock is 4 minutes fast, by the way. So some of you looking at it going, hey, come on. We are going to adjourn for the day. Please continue to heed my admonition overnight, and we'll start again tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. See you then.